Hello, Speedroid fans. This is Kyle, aka Quarion, and it's long overdue, but here is the long-awaited Speedroid deck profile. Uh, Most people normally have their deck lists along with their replays together, but I honestly changed my deck around so much that I feel like I don't really hang on to the same list for too long. I'm constantly swapping in text in and out of my list. But this is what I currently have in the current meta with White Forest and Tenpai, well, maybe less Tenpai, Blue Eyes, and Azamina. So anyways, let's get into it. So obviously we have the one dice here. This guy makes the wheels turn, the dice roll of this deck. But despite that, you still really only want to run one because, well, it's not something you want to see in your hand too much. As you can see, there's unfortunately no way for this card to summon itself, so you're always relying on Takatomborg and in some cases Duke to summon it from your hand, if that's the case. Second, next card in the deck list, we've got Terratop. Obviously the best card in the deck, used and abused in many other places, but needless to say, you run the max copies of this. Nothing else really to say about it. You want to see this guy as much as possible. Next up, we have 3 Takatomborg, the best extender of the deck, depending on how you want to qualify Unicorn, but we'll get into that later. This guy pretty much fixes almost any hand. It makes bad hands playable, and it makes good hands even better. So you always want to see these. Even seeing multiples of these are not bad because it has a once per turn on its special summon, but however its actual effect you can use more than once per turn. So you can normal summon one, special summon the other, and use both of them, and there's no conflict there. Of course, you are subject to getting hand trapped, and then, well, you're kind of shit out of luck there, but what can you do? You can't win them all. Next, we've got 2 Denden Daiko Dukes. This guy, he's kind of in a weird spot in the deck. We like him because he's one of our main ways to recur things from the graveyard. At the same time, kind of sucks to draw. And having one of them, I mean, it's honestly possible to get the deck to work just one Duke. However, if you open that Duke alongside, like, say, Dice, it's really hard to summon that Dice now. And also, later in the game, you kind of need the Duke in order to be able to get your follow-up going, because sometimes you'll want to summon the Dice back, or like your Piper, or you'll just straight up be running low on tuners. And dumping this guy with Hound will let you keep going. Next up, we have Car Turbo. I'll get to the non-engine at the end after we get through the engine pieces. We've got Car Turbo. Car Turbo functions similarly to Takatomborg, but it has less utility, as in you can't tag it out for dice. But it does help extend after someone ashes or imperms. The first thing you do, you summon Car Turbo, use your normal summon plus Car Turbo, go into Rubber Band Shooter, because they don't realize that's actually what they should be using their hand traps on. And also helps push for game in many circumstances, paired with a lot of our extra deck monsters. I've even had some rare situations where I just dump it with Ultra Hound to get a little bit of a boost to clear out lethal. Alright, so yeah, some people, you could run this at 3. I would not run it at less than 2 though. The reason I run it at 2 is because it enables a few niche lines, and I also don't want to see like too many of this in hand. It's nice to have, but it's not something I always need to see, so that's why it's at 2. Next up, we have Ultra Hound. I run it at 3, could be at 2, depending on whether you prefer Ultra Hound or Marble Machine more. This guy lets you, you're gonna be dumping like Duplicate most of the time, but you can also dump Duke if you end up with Dice in hand. But there's also a really funny combo line where if you open up Ultra Hound plus Duke in hand, you can actually send Duplicate to the grave, summon it, targeting Ultra Hound, obviously your only other monster, and then you just immediately go into Cork to search Wheel, and then the Wheel discards the Duke, and then you can the low roll of that, like say you worst case scenario you roll a 1 or a 2, you still get to Baron with like a draw and a Piper Excavate if I remember correctly. I can't really list the line off the top of my head, but it is quite fun when it pops off like that. Also, it's good to do occasionally if you open Unicorn and then you summon Hound, send Duplicate to grave, and then you make Quirk there, and then they're forced to use their interruption there, and it lets you pivot better if you get hand trapped than if you go all in on like the high roll board and they imperm your like rubber band shooter, then you kind of end on nothing other than Unicorn. Moving on, we've got Yo-Yo. This guy, again, like Duke and Dice, you don't want to see him in your opening hand, but it does guarantee a lot of lines from Rubber Band Shooter where you banish a level 7 for Yo-Yo and Terror Top, guarantee it. The other common one is Yo-Yo plus Hound, but besides those two, I mean, the guarantees Rubber Band Shooter effects to work, so you gotta run at least one of these. If you want to be live more, you can run more discards, but that runs into its own problems. Next, we have Piper. Never run this at more than 1. You can run it at 0, but I really like it at 1 because it enables a lot of, like, if you're able to like combo off, like say you have Terror Top and like almost any other card besides the quote unquote bricks, like any other playable card, Terror Top along with like Takatomborg, a Hound, a Car Turbo, a Marble Machine, any of those, if you have those two, you can make the standard end board of Brawn and Crystal Wing, but you also get to do a Piper Excavate for like 3 cards, which can help you find key tech cards for a certain matchup, or even just extra disruptions that you would not normally have access to with the regular Speedroid cards. And then you also get a draw from Charge Warrior, which I'll get into later. Next up, we have... Do I go into Unicorn for now? You know what, we'll go through the Speedroid names first, and then we'll get to Unicorn. So lastly, we have Marble Machine. You could run this at 3. You could also run Hound at 3. But like 5 normal summons is kind of where you want to sit around, depending on which one you prefer more. I like Hound because it's not once per turn and also has a useful grave effect. But there's arguments for both of them. This guy basically discount Terror Top. Despite being worse Terror Top, it's still a good card, so you still run it, and it's necessary for many of the combos of the deck. Okay, the second last Speedroid card we've got is Speedroid Wheel. This, it's like a feast or famine card, if I had to describe it. You either roll a 1 or 2 and cry, or you roll like 3+ and you pop off on your opponent. This card, while not necessary, it does create a lot of situations where your opponent is forced to use their Ash Blossom on it. Otherwise, there's a good chance that you get insulated or are able to make your plays without going through a major choke point. Of course, there's a random element, but what can you do? That's the Speedroid deck in a nutshell. It's also nice for getting Dukes out of hand, like I mentioned with the Hound plus Duke combo. Alright, our last card, Speedroid Duplicate. It's a compulsory evacuation device, but also Speedroid. But however, you don't really use that. Mainly, you just want to dump Duplicate and then summon it either for an extra body, or you actually use it as a tuner because it conveniently makes one of your level 3s, like basically Terror Top or Ultra Hound, into a level 2, and that makes it so that your dice, when you summon it, you can target this and modulate this to whatever you want, since you already have the correct levels for Cork Shooter, which opens up a lot of plays. Okay, so Next, I guess we'll move on to Kashtira package. Honestly, in Master Duel, these guys are like the best. It's the best and possibly only engine that I think works well with Speedroids. Kashtira Unicorn, pretty infamous if I say so myself. This guy, he punishes your opponent for hand trapping you. He makes it easy to make Varon, and doubles as 2 bodies and 2 interruptions if you decide to keep Birth and Unicorn on your field at the end of your combo, which is honestly quite a common occurrence. Also, it's not too bad if you get Max Seed and like you just leave Unicorn there. You might be able to rip an important extra deck piece from your opponent that will either prevent them from comboing or prevent them from KOing you that turn. So yeah, this Birth, yeah, well, it sucks to open with, but what can you do? This rates off obviously just another copy of Unicorn. It also baits Ash Blossom. The only problem is that it plays into Droll a little bit harder, and it telegraphs to your opponent that, yeah, you should definitely shotgun your Maxi here if you haven't already. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the main deck engine. I guess I'll include Small World at the end when I talk about my tech choices, but we'll move on to the extra deck now. So we have Cork Shooter. So Cork Shooter, you kind of need this. It's what I like to call the best worst card of the deck. you can only make it using dice or duplicate, pretty much, and it summons your guys back. However, it is vulnerable to a lot of different hand traps. However, if you can make this before Rubber Band Shooter, if it gets impermed, you probably have some backup way to get into another disruption of some sort. I call it the worst card because it's the reason why so many engines are not compatible with Speedroids. Because right here it says you cannot special summon the turn you activate this effect, except wind monsters, and that means before and after card. If you summon, like, say, Fenrir, Kashtira Fenrir before Cork Shooter, and then try to summon Cork Shooter, you can't use its effect. They're just not compatible. To add a Speedroid spell trap, it comes up occasionally. It depends. Like, there are certain combos where you're gonna do this and search like duplicate, but it doesn't come up that much. I run 2 of them. The first one is so that, well, you obviously need it for your main attempt at your combo. Second one can be either used as a backup attempt on turn 3, say you get stopped, or you can summon it as an extender with Ultra Hound's Grave effect as follow-up. Next, we've got Chenbara. Chenbara is an OTK tool, but I don't summon it too much. However, I have banished it on quite a few occasions when I need to get access to a level 3 plus a level 2, namely Terror Top plus Marble Machine, or like Marble Machine plus Card Turbo, and in some cases, like when I'm really desperate, I'll even go Yo-Yo plus Dice, hoping that I get Yo-Yo if I've used up all my important like search effects. But yeah, and in rare cases, you can still summon it with Ultra Hound's Grave effect by shuffling back Kagoida, which should be in your graveyard most of the time due to, well, just due to your regular combo routes. Okay, next we've got Hagoida. This guy is a pretty funny dude. Basically, whenever you're trying to do your combos, you want to be looking for ways to use you want to ask yourself, how am I going to use Hagoida for 2 synchros? You use it for 1, and then what's my other tuner to enable it to revive itself and then synchro again with it. So normally you get to pick 1 synchro of your choice. For me, my options are basically Crystal Wing, Kite Drake, Shen, Baron, Rider, Fast Dragon, and then the other one is pretty much always going to be Crystal Wing or Kite Drake, just because of how the levels work out with the deck. We have access to a lot of level 3 tuners, and then we kind of have to work if we want to go into other levels. But yeah, this guy, great. He's part of your combo, and he's a follow-up. Just have to be able to summon any sort of Speedroid tuner. Next, we've got Charge Warrior, which its main uses here are either you use it to synchro climb into Varan and get a draw, or you just banish it with Rubber Band Shooter later on. Because level 3, with how many level 3s in deck, it opens up a lot of opportunities. You've got Terratop, you've got Tactomborg, you've got Duke, you've got Carturbo, you have Hound. You can even do Yo-Yo plus Marble Machine in some cases. But yeah, all around, it's a very versatile banish target. You always want a level 6. You don't need to use Charge Warrior, but Charge Warrior is my personal choice. Clear Wing, the signature monster of Yugo. Despite that, it honestly has seen better days. I'm almost always banishing it from my extra deck. Like between it and Fast Dragon, I almost always choose to banish Clear Wing. It's a bit unfortunate, but there's not exactly a whole ton of level 7 options we can go for. It is also a rare target to summon with Clear Wing. Clear Wing Rider, which we'll get to later. Next up, we've got 2 Crystal Wings. This guy, unlike Clear Wing, you're actually going to want to end on Crystal Wing on your board many times. This guy's, honestly, he's solid all around. He's a little power crept in this day and age, but he still gets the job done a lot of the times. You can beat over a huge number of monsters with its effect to gain attack and a monster negate. Plus, there's niche OTK lines where if your opponent has either 2 level 5 plus monsters in attack mode, 1 level 5 plus monster that can't be destroyed by a battle, or 1 level 5 plus monster and a monster with, I believe, 1000 attack or less. Basically, you attack with one of them, and then you attack with the other, and you do a double negate, and the second guy goes up and swings for 6000 damage. So that's pretty cool. If you want to see an example of that, just watch my replay against Illusion Chimera on my channel. Next up, we have Kite Drake, another level 8. This guy he's got like quote-unquote generic materials considering the deck. Can make it with Unicorn early to force a negate, or you just, on follow-up, you summon a Cork using Ultra Hound, and then that enables your Hagoida, and then you threaten a board wipe, and if your opponent negates and destroys it, you get to search for follow-up. If they don't destroy it, then you still have the body to punch over something, or just use it as material later. Next, we have Shen Shen. I used to really not like this card, but that was probably just because we were in a bad meta for it. But right now, Shen Shen's actually quite powerful against the Fiendsmith engine and White Forest, with its ability to banish things that get used on the field. And it also enables a certain line with Terratop where instead of ending on like Crystal Wing plus Baron, you can end on Shen Shen plus Baron. You give up having the Hound in the grave, however, you do get follow-up. Well, you can choose to get follow-up with Piper instead, or you can choose to get another form of disruption. Plus, it also counts as follow-up in itself if you have a hand trap to discard, like, say, Ogre or Ash or Maxi. And yeah, so it's not too bad if you miss out on the Hound follow-up, because it's also follow-up. It also can put your banished cards back in the graveyard, and that also fixes your follow-up, so it's pretty nice. I do wish its attack was a little bit higher, or maybe its defense, but it's fine. It does the job. Baron, the best level 10 in the game, which is also conveniently wind and easy to make with Unicorn. Honestly, I don't think I need to say much more about this. It's a fantastic card. What else is there to say? Omni Negate, Pop, and Shuffle back. And Insulation too. Next we have Clearwing Rider. This guy, I don't summon him too much, but he has won me a lot of games. Even when you get a bad dice roll, you still get to pop a card, and he's honestly a rather big motorcycle, despite the fact that it's actually remote controlled. Who knows how that works out? But yeah, it does have a secondary effect that on your opponent's turn you can tag it out for 2 level 7s. Normally I have one of them banished at this point, so ends up being just one, but it could come up. It's more of a backup in case you get a bad roll and aren't able to finish off your opponent. Next up we have Fast Dragon. Honestly, my preferred choice of level 7 if I'm forced to summon one. This guy can negate pretty much negate any monster summon from the extra deck, even pendulums, although you don't really see pendulums too much. You don't really want to use its pendulum effect that when it gets destroyed to put in the back row, because in my opinion it's more useful if you just let it go back to the extra deck, and then you can use it to banish with Rubber Band Shooter or even summon with Clearwing Rider if you still end up going into it. Alright, our last card, Rubber Band Shooter. Honestly, this between Rubber Band Shooter and Cork, these guys are the core of our combos. It also makes a lot of hands that look unplayable into playable. Like say you open with just like Fuwalos plus Tactomborg, you can at least get into like either Baron or like Crystal Wing with a bit of follow up. So yeah, it's a fantastic card. The only issue is that you can't use it for a link material afterwards. So it doesn't come up in this build, but if you wanted to run other link monsters, then you'd start seeing the issues. You want to run 2 just so you're not leaving yourself open to Unicorn, as well as being able to make a second one for follow up on turn 3. Great card, a little bit expensive if I had to say so myself. When I say expensive, I don't mean crafting points, I mean the fact that we literally just run cards to yeet out of the deck just for it. Okay, so that's the extra deck and the core, so we'll get into my current tech choices for the White Forest, Azamina, Fiendsmith, Blue Eyes, whatever meta. So we have 2 Drolls. I kind of like Droll because we need it for Small World, which I'll get into. And also, it makes it so that if someone opens with Engraver, you can stop them from doing Fiendsmith plays, and then they can't just immediately pivot to like their main strategy. Or at least they can't easily do it. It doesn't hit every deck, but you kind of want things that will be game determining. And for me, that's Droll. Next up, we have Maxi, which is part of the Maxi tag, so I'll just lump them together. We've got Maxi, we have 3 Ash Blossoms, we have 2 Called by the Grave, and 1 Crossout. This deck plays absolutely horribly into Maxi. More often than not, you're going to have to end your turn like immediately, unless you're going second, in which case you're gonna be forced to try and OTK your opponent, which honestly, no matter how good you are with this deck, you're gonna see very mixed results based on how quickly your opponents draw into more hand traps while taking the challenge, but it's the best you've got. So next up, we've got Ghost Ogre. I kind of like Ghost Ogre because even if you're not stopping the effect, removing a body can stop your opponent from extending further. Like if you hit a Link 3 monster, a Link 2 monster, that's 2 Link materials gone. However, you don't really want to use this on Fiendsmith sequence, because that's honestly kind of pointless. It just ends up using itself as fusion material, I believe. But it's also quite good against Blue Eyes, although I haven't been seeing as much Blue Eyes lately, so I might end up dropping a Ghost Ogre for another copy of Droll. Ash Blossom, part of Maxi tags, but also is just a good card all around. Next up, we've got Fuelos. It's honestly a brick going first, but you can still use it for the cost, but technically not a cost of Small World, and be able to go into whatever you want. If you want to go into Unicorn, you can use Fuelos. Go into no, not Piper. That doesn't work. You have to go Fuelos, Takatomborg, and then you can get Unicorn, or you can go Fuelos, Unicorn, and then get Terratop. So it works with Small World. It's not the end of the world. I run 2 because while it is worse Maxi, it's actually a lot worse than I originally anticipated. It is significantly weaker than Maxi. I actually feel like I'm able to do something and not immediately end my turn when someone uses this against me, so that's why I only run it at 2. Next up, what do we got? We got Small World. It's honestly, it's kind of sad that Small World is just straight up better than Speedroid Scratch. At least before we get the support coming out in Supreme Darkness. But yeah, Small World, turn whatever your least useful card in hand is into either Terratop or turn to Unicorn, although sometimes I like to start off doing my combo, see if they hand trap me, and then after they hand trap me, then I use Small World to grab the perfect piece to be able to continue my combo going. Yeah, and if they don't hand trap you, you can use Small World to grab whatever you think is a high impact hand trap for the current meta. So I guess it'd probably be Droll in my case. You go take a Speedroid, go into Fuelos, and then add Droll. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Last thing, Imperm. It's just a solid hand trap. Well, what else is there to say? And I believe that covers my deck profile. This video took quite a bit longer to come out than I was expecting, but I guess it's finally done. I mean, I'm gonna be changing my tech cards as I see fit, but the core of the deck, the extra deck, it's not gonna change much. This is pretty similar to the list you're gonna see me using in most of my replays, and that's gonna be it. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I've been thinking about making some videos where I do commentary on my replays, where I discuss, or as the replay is going out, I'll pause it and discuss why I made certain decisions. Sometimes when you're watching a replay, it's not really obvious why I'm doing things. Like, obviously you'll see me doing the standard lines, but sometimes you'll see me do some really weird lines that look suboptimal, but it's because I'm trying to play around something, or I anticipate my opponent doing a certain thing based on delays. And I think that would be an interesting choice. So leave a comment if that's something you'd be interested in, and if you want, you can even suggest which of my replays that you'd like me to do some analysis on, and I will see if I can get to that. So thank you for watching, and that's going to be all from me.